goodness. I am resident of Colorwood Jewel Saints for YouTube. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We're here to review GhostWatch, which aired in 1992 on the BBC. And
I have my GhostWatch right here. It tells accurate time.
Excellent. Nice. What's interesting too is the one thing I did like about this, they actually do say the BBC during this movie. So they're trying to keep it very realistic, or at least realistic looking. I did watch the documentary too. What did you guys think of this when you saw it? I know what
I see where Paranormal Activity came from.
Yeah.
Very clearly. And I know that we have different, Gordon and I have different tastes for found footage. I like it a lot more than he does. And I like Paranormal Activity a great deal. But now it just feels like it was grafted from this. I thought it was very clever. I think, especially for its time, it was very well done, and it tapped into the way that ghosts behave, I think, in a child's mind. And that explains some of, apparently, just the terrifying qualities that it had when it came out.
Yeah. Gordon?
Well, I'm not sure I want to say this aloud on the podcast, but I believe in brutal honesty. I actually fell asleep during the first half hour when I first watched it. I then watched it again, and I think the biggest flaw of GhostWatch is at the first hour, it doesn't really do much to build. I mean, the last half hour is really just on fire, but it...
Gordon, let me ask you a question, though. Is that kind of by design to just normalize everything? I mean, if you listen to the beginning of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, which it's very similar to in a lot of ways, that is like, oh, good, band music again.
But he's very economical in terms of the band music.
That's true.
Because he timed it so that somebody who was turning in, they'd be tuning out of the Charlie McCarthy show, out of another radio show. So by the time they would have missed the Mercury Theater presentation of War of the Worlds. So they would have heard the band music, and then there's a cut to there's something happening in Grover's Mill. Here, it felt like there was a lot more. It felt like there could have been a couple of sequences that could have been either cut or rewritten that wouldn't make it because if it had been an hour, I would have enjoyed it, but it was kind of a slog because the first hour is just kind of bumpy and not really engaging, and it doesn't pick up until leading into the next half hour.
I think, what made it work for me is that and this is normally a sin with these things, but I think it was a benefit here. I watched it with the same degree of attention that I would pay to actual television that was doing something like this. So I did not give it, until that last half hour, my full attention. It had to make me give my attention to it. And I'm probably being too much of an apologist for it, but I don't know if it's designed to work that way, but it works that way really well. Because it really does simulate TV. And TV is a thing that nowadays, especially infotainment type TV, we don't pay attention to fully.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's thought. Joel, what do you think?
I'm with Gordon to a degree. I do think the first part of the movie is a bit boring, and I do think too that is by design. But I think where this movie, there are parts of this movie that are really good. The supernatural stuff, when they start picking it up, is really, from a psychological standpoint, really good. There's moments they let the actors act. I'm more talking about the girl who's in front of the camera. But to me, where they sort of drop the ball here, and this is this is where I got to give the Blair Witch its due. When when you watch the Blair Witch Project and the girl gets in front of the camera and she's apologizing for bringing her friends out into these woods about how she got them lost. The director lied to them and it wasn't completely honest of what they were going to do, which makes the film all the more devious. But with this, what I'm getting to is they let her act. They let the dialogue in her act and tell the story. I do wish when they had this sort of blackout with the camera and you couldn't really see her, you do hear her a bit. I wish they would have kept that going, but then you hear her screaming and you hear all these cats like tearing at her. They should have let her act a little more. I do feel there was more things they could have did from a terror standpoint, from the supernatural aspect of it, because you do hear cats at the end, going as Parquet, the guy is like talking into the camera. Again, I do wish they would have just let the blonde-haired girl, the actress, at the end, act a little more instead of just. Again, this is not a long movie, which is good. I didn't want it like a 3-hour long movie, no. But sure. I do feel this movie pulls away, like the end feels rushed. Maybe that's just me. Like the end of this thing just feels like rushed. And I get that's probably more, they're trying to get more toward the realism of it before you see it's produced and stuff. But to me, that's just my viewpoint of it. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I'm going to defend the ending, and I'm going to defend her, the actress, why she didn't act more. Which is, I think that with something like that, when you've got basically everything is being shot to hell, basically, because it's clear that there is something going on in that house. Expecting a reality type show to and especially in the 90s where you really wouldn't have that kind of disruptive television. It needs to be the horror needs to be short, it needs to be sudden, and you're not going to know what you're doing in that situation. My problem wasn't with the half hour. I think it was perfectly timed because you needed all that stuff to go, what the hell's going on here? I think the hour was a little too. I understand where they were going, and usually the BBC, when they do things like this, usually it's maybe a little over an hour. But I do think that first hour, there was probably a way they could have made it a little stronger in terms of providing background and maybe hinting at it, because a lot of the exposition tends to be people calling in saying, oh yeah, there used to be this child molester, or yeah, this. So I think saying she should have acted more, they should have had the ending expand. In a real situation like that is not going to happen. You're going to, and I don't know if this was done, if this was all pre-recorded and put out, or if they did this as live. If they did it as live, it makes sense that some of it's a little wonky, but they're not going to be worried about, okay, you need to act more, because you're basically, it's kind of the way Dark Shadows was directed. Once you have everything blocked out and you're doing it effectively as live, you don't get to go back and go, well, you need to do that longer. You figure that out in the rehearsal. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, Patrick sees it as the first hour leading in, and then the ending kicks in. Jewel, you see it as the ending kind of needing help. I think the initial, and I think it was a deliberate choice to make the first hour kind of boring, as Patrick said. But I do think once that picks up, it's just snap, 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 snap.
Yeah, and that really, pedestrian first hour, again, it just creates a baseline for what we think reality is.
Mm-hmm.
If I had, I'm not trying to play Monday morning quarterback. If I had one real change to this movie, to me, the real end to this movie should not have been Parker's character looking into the camera. The ending of that movie should have been where the reporter on the scene has this look of pure shock, and his face almost looks, I don't want to say ashen white, but it looks like he saw something pure terrifying, something he wasn't expecting to see. And you see the kids coming out with the mother, but you don't see the woman reporter. Had they shown that last and maybe not completely shown some of the basement footage, I think that would have made this a lot more terrifying and sort of realistic, if you will, because it's like, wait, because you see the cops coming, you see like the camera guy who was like zonked out or something, his head was like, I guess, got busted open or something. He's all like being stretchered out. It's like, holy shit, it goes bad. And like when it goes bad in this movie, it goes bad. And it looks really
now, Jewel,
go ahead, Patrick.
No. Gordon, you please.
Well, Jewel, let me give you a little bit of historical context, because as someone who's watched a lot of British drama, science fiction, etc., what do you have to understand with, especially the BBC? There are British guidelines around what you can show on TV, especially at that time, were a lot more stringent. So, unless you're willing to use your Chi Wongs to go back to England and have a conversation with the British government, they were dealing with what they did under the restrictions at that time. And it was also tough too, because at that time, the powers that be at the BBC, Doctor Who had been off the air because they didn't like it. There's a whole political thing which is way beyond the scope of this that we can talk in a later episode. The guy, Craig Charles, the gentleman of color with the Bears jacket on, kind of goofing off outside.
Mm-hmm.
He was the star of a show called Red Dwarf, which was it's a science fiction. It's a science fiction comedy. You can find it all on Tubi for free. Yeah. That was the only reason that was being made. It got made was that BBC had studios in Manchester, and it's like, well, we got to use this for something. So you've got this kind of and when you try to do any kind of risque jokes, there's always the BBC has people saying you can't do that. It's basically the British equivalent of standards and practices. So it would be easy to say at 30 years after the fact, well, this is what they coulda, woulda, shoulda done. But I think that ending is that last half hour is pitch perfect, because you're trying to pull off something which in real life would be a lot worse. But I think they had to do it. And again, it's easy to criticize something after the fact. It's easy to find fault with it. It would have been nice if, say, Dark Shadows had a little bit more budget per episode, because they could have done more, but they didn't. But I do think, even though that first hour for me was a bit of a snooze fest, I think that last half hour made up for it. And they were going against a lot of very stringent rules.
Now, Jewel, I got a question for you, and help me remember this. They had the mother had a term for that room, that little room.
Oh, the glory hole.
Was it, now, Jewel, is that what they called it?
I think I forget, but I do like the fact of how they built the terror of that room. Because
now, do you have have you experienced a glory hole like that has been terrifying to you?
A glory hole.
You need to specify the context.
Yeah. Now, Jewel, have you ever been trapped in a glory hole the way she was?
Trapped in a hole.
No, glory hole.
A glory. No.
Joel. Yeah, a lot of us have been in glory holes, and that's okay. We're not judging here.
No. It's a voice of compassion, Jewel. Did you find the idea of being trapped in a glory hole in England like that to be terrifying.
I think the way they built it was terrifying. They had it boarded up, and once they
There is a
when they
board
were
usually running up the middle.
when
Yeah.
they removed it, I was not expecting like this sort of like weird explosion with glass. Like I don't know what to call
There
it.
is often a weird explosion when they remove the wooden wall in the glory hole.
Yeah, like the camera guy just gets knocked out. I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
You know, I was shocked by that, and I was really shocked by when the woman went in and the door shut right behind her, which they
A,
did talk about.
a woman going into the glory hole and the door shutting behind her is shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I do think that there is good terror in this movie. The pacing, yeah, it's slow. Usually in movies like this, pacing tends to be slow because you're trying to build the terror. I get where they were going with all the phone calls because they did the woman in the studio, the parapsychologist, I think she is. I think she got into the history of the house a bit, if memory serves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was just one psychologist. There
Yeah.
weren't a pair of them.
Yeah, it was just one.
Yeah. Now, I was a little disappointed by the performance of the guy playing the representative from Psycop.
Yeah,
They come on, guys, really?
Yeah, he was doing the British version of a bland American accent, and it's not good.
Well, and he was a little too pleased with himself. I mean, Michael Shermer occasionally would get a little like that, but that was stacking the deck. If anything, you have to make your psychop person the most reasonable, sane sounding, accessible person there, because then that really flips all your expectations when things start going downhill.
Yeah, Joe. You need to make that kind of character more like Patrick is being in this very podcast. You know, the voice of reason.
Yes. Yes.
I'm just exactly.
What was you guys' favorite scene in this?
Well, I mean, anything in that last half hour is something to write home about. I don't know.
I just love the liberal terse of use of the worm of the phrase glory hole. You know, it's just it's. I'm surprised it hasn't become a meme.
Welcome to see the parking lot and I did podcast as long as you need. No, I'm gonna go home. Hang on, I was giving some friends. Are you guys gonna be okay? Do you need me to stay?
No.
Okay. All right. I will see you later.
So much.
Bye.
Bye.
They were witness to this whole glory hole discussion.
Oh,
Oh, no, they appreciated it. Absolutely. They they were concerned also, Jewel, for your immortal soul.
yeah. It's Joel. I think, I think
God, the driver was a big man, and the seat
Joel.
went
I
crazy
would
down.
never. I don't normally say this, but I think for you, I should make this exception. I think you should really explore
Oh, no,
the love
Gordon,
and
you
faith that
can't.
comes with our Lord and Savior L. Ron
Okay.
Hubbard in Scientology.
Okay, good. I'm trying to explore. Well,
You should get audited, Joel. Seriously, put the cans in your hand and let them figure out what's going on.
I have found footage horror movie lighting going on right now.
Very nice. Very
See, people, this is what Patrick does for you.
Yeah.
And Jill, you need to thank Patrick and treat him with more respect because he's bringing entertainment value.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate the value of entertainment you bring, good sir.
So, what did you think of the documentaries surrounding this?
The documentaries were really good. But I do think when you go back and watch the movie, like, and then watch the documentary, I know the first part of the movie is boring, but I do think the pacing of the movie, though long, it feels long, is pretty good. I don't think they do a bad job with the pacing. And when things do go bad, it does feel a lot more intense. Because to me, there are important moments in the long hour that we see. Like, for example, the voice is coming from the girl. That happens later when she's sitting by the chair in like the fetal position, like on her butt, and really, really good because they're somewhat repeating moments that have happened earlier, but they're showing them as they are. Like, okay, when the girl has the voices at the doctor's office, and then she has the voices sitting in the chair. When the cat, when you hear the cat sounds, or the beating from the wall that the girl that she's hitting the wall, she says the noise is coming from the wall. Then you hear the noises do coming from the wall without anybody hitting the wall. It's really good from a psychological standpoint what they do. Psychology wise, this movie's great. It has a lot of great psychology to it from a ghost standpoint. From a they made it entertainment that way. That's where this movie really finds its gold nuggets. That the things that you see earlier, all the little boring things that we see, it's all going to pay to fruition and pay like what's the word I'm looking for? Pay dirt, I guess, later on. Yeah, payoff later on. And it all hits home. I mean, to me, my favorite moment in this movie, like I said, the scene I love the most, that hits home most for me, when the girl goes in the basement, the one woman realizes, hey, that's not live. That's not live. That's a recorded. The ghost is in the machine. That's what she's saying. And then later on, when we see it live, we see the guy who was wearing the bear's jacket. He just looks so like terrified and in disbelief by what has happened. It gives that sense of realism to a degree. That's what brought it home for me. If that helps.
It does. It does. Could there have been a good part for Walter the Refrigerator Perry? Speaking of the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't he play for the Bears?
Yeah,
he
did.
Bears or the Otters, one or the other.
Yeah, he played for the Bears.
Okay.
So did the most recent Hall of Fame inductee, was the guy's name? Steve Mongo McMichael played for the Bears too.
Yes, as did Masterpiece Theater host Russell Baker.
And Brian Piccolo.
Yeah.
So hit your knees for Brian Piccolo tonight, Joel.
Brian Piccolo, who's that?
Because have you never seen Brian's song, Patrick?
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry. I still think that should be sort of combined with Rollerball. I think you could put them together.
Mm-hmm. Joel, that's your assignment. You need to watch Brian's song and then Rollerball and then report back to me and Patrick.
Yeah, I gotta say, Joel, Rollerball is the 70s dystopic science fiction MGM produced movie that Soylent Green is for everybody else. I love Soylent Green, but it's no Rollerball. Man, Rollerball is the stuff. Have you ever seen that, Rollerball?
I've seen the remake.
Oh, Joel. Jesus
Christ. Let me check. I think the original might be on Tubi.
It's really good. I mean, Joel, it's Soylent Green level, if not better. It's really, really good.
I'll give it a watch.
Oh, yeah, you'd love it.
Yep, throwing it in the chat.
Yeah, you would really enjoy that. And James Caan, John Houseman, John Beck is just wonderful in it. A really underrated actor, John Beck.
Plus it's people beating each other up on motorcycles, which I know is your thing, Joel.
It's a crazy sport. I mean, if you've seen the remake, I know you're a big Chris Klein fan. So you've got that Chris Klein collection on your shelf, an inch and a half thick. And Rebecca Romaine in it. That was cool.
Oh my god.
Now you don't like Rebecca Romaine. All right.
I liked her as Mystique.
What about number one?
Yeah.
Get back to the. Well, never mind.
Yeah, Joel, I got the reference.
What?
It's Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. She is number one.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's the name of her character. Yeah,
Okay.
technically Una Chen Riley, but number one. That's her.
Well,
that's
Una is a variation of the word one, so either way, it's correct.
I never thought about that, and you're right. I always thought it was like an Una O'Connor tribute. My favorite crazy old woman in Bride of Frankenstein.
But I think what we're trying to say, Patrick, is that Jewel is highly at fault for missing that. I mean, it just went whoosh.
Well, I think, Jewel, here's the thing. You have a lot out there that you're going to be able to enjoy. I mean, that's your life is full of opportunity.
Yeah.
You might even choose to revisit Halloween Ends and think, hey, this movie isn't so bad after all.
Now, Joel, you bitterly complained about the this has a boring beginning, right? Yeah. Imagine if it had 209 boring installments leading up to that. Boy, it's a good thing you don't like anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a shame if there were any kind of artistic piece that had 209 boring parts and then got interesting.
Joel, I'm just saying. You do see the irony train on this one, right?
Wait a second.
Jewel, we have Patrick has. I think I can say that Patrick, to use common street terms right now, has owned you, and he's pwned you as well.
Let me say this, okay? Number one, the 209 episodes of Dark Shadows aren't boring, okay? That's number one. Number two, the fact that
they almost didn't get the series canceled. Of course not.
Yeah. Those ABC executives were looking at those episodes and going, "Yeah, 72. Oh yeah, this is
more of this.
We want more. We want more bleeder valves and."
Okay, Joel. So keep serving up the pie.
So, number two, the fact that people bought this, that this was real, shows how gullible British people are. I mean, come on. This was so obvious. This was more obvious of a fake than Blair Witch Project was. And it's like, really? Like, people bought this shit? Seriously? Like, again, psychology is good.
Let me ask you a question, Joel. Let me ask you a question. You are familiar with British folk horror, correct? This is a country that has been steeped in legend and myth throughout its existence.
Thousands.
The other thing is, for something like this, that if it's posited as, because I know they had to add the credits at the beginning, at the end, to make sure people understood that yes, this is fiction. But without that, you could easily see this as being like a live telecast, and then have all this stuff happen. You're like, I mean, Patrick and I are old enough when Geraldo Rivera was saying, "Hey, we're going to open Al Capone's vaults and see what kind of treasures are there," and all it was just a few empty beer bottles. So, like, yeah, Joel, it is possible. Just because you didn't like the first hour doesn't mean it's not plausible. I mean, I didn't like the first hour, but I also see where they were trying to go with it.
I see where they were trying to go with it too. It's not just about, again, the documentary when I watched it, they're talking about how people thought this was. I'm thinking, okay, so when I go watch this, even by today's standards, I should get that, right? I didn't, not one bit. And here's why too. Because of the way they shot this, they pull back way too much for the whole studio effect thing. It's like, that's what makes this look so not believable. Like, if you were really trying to sell this as real, British or not, you shouldn't keep pulling back your camera. The close-ups are what's selling you. The woman being in the house is what's selling you. It's like, that's the most terrifying thing.
It was effective. It was effective for the people who were watching it, and for the people who were watching British television at the time. I mean, it was effective for them, and they were of that era.
Yeah, I mean, Joel, you're applying 2024 rules to 1990s media. It's like complaining that you're watching The Invisible Man with Claude Rains and the dialogue is too stagey. It's like that's what they did in the 1930s. And Joel, you want unbelievable. Let me top that. When the Blair Witch Project came out, I was living in St. Louis, and I was getting all the hype about, oh, this is an alleged, found footage. The kids were lost. 2 days after seeing this movie, I saw the actress in a Jack in the Box ad saying, "Come, we got burgers on sale."
Heather Donahoe.
Right. So it's easy. There's some pieces that it's easy to say, and it's honest to say, I don't get it because I wasn't there, and I'm applying modern rules to television back then. It's like complaining that Star Trek, the original series, wasn't serialized, or that Lost in Space didn't have enough of a romance between Major Rest and Judy. They just didn't do that back then. In the 90s, when you're considering that British have different censors, where they've, this film came almost about maybe 15, 16 years after a bunch of people tried to get the Monty Python's Life of Brian banned because they thought it was making fun of Jesus Christ. And Jewel, I want you to go on YouTube and search for The Secret Life of Brian. It's a documentary about how all that went down. So I think despite the limitations, and good art comes from limitations, they kicked ass. The first hour might not have been up to snuff, but they delivered in the last half hour. And I know, Jewel, you like to think, okay, well, they should have done it my way. Well, Jewel, you've got a computer, you know where to get pencils and paper, write it.
I'm uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, Patrick.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable. It wasn't.
No. You're fine. You're fine. Jewel, here's the thing. When the end is near, and the thing is that often you'll find that you're facing the final curtain.
Yeah.
And at that point, as a writer, you need to state it clear. You need to make your case of which you're certain. You planned each charted course and each careful step along the byway. But you know what? More than this, Jewel Stain, you look at the world and you say, I did it my way.
Mm-hmm.
There were times, Jewel, I bet you knew that you bit off more than you could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, you ate it up and spit it out. You stood tall, and through it all, you saw rats from the mall, and you did it your way.
Well, here's the thing.
What is a man, Jewel? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not. To say the things he truly feels, and not the words of a snitch who squeals.
And remember, Joel, snitches get stitches.
You took the blows and you struck the pose.
in that little room in the British house, and you did it your way.
So Jewel,
All
go
I
out, find your glory hole, and bask in it.
Here's the thing. I'm not
This
judging
video is
this
going to get in
movie.
so much trouble with these two businesses.
Just flagged 8 Ways to Sunday.
Here's the
You know,
thing. I'm not judging. I want to be clear.
Nice
I'm not
knowing you.
judging this film by 2024 standards. I'm more judging the film by 90 standards because
when were you born, Jewel?
1982.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Look.
Yeah, thank you. You just have such a youthful snap and verve to you.
Think about it this way. When I was watching this, there were two specific products I was thinking about. Number one, the Blair Witch Project, because that's the next found footage movie after this one. Number two, not a series that's found footage, but a series that I guess you could say similar. The X-Files, because it doesn't just deal in UFOs; it deals in deal in paranormal stuff. To me, I would say this. Yes, did this movie inspire paranormal activity? Yes, they do deserve that. But I do think, because Chris Carter, I do think took inspiration from DS, from other products that were in the 70s and 80s, and this as well. I do think that the one thing I would have loved to see here, shoot the studio scene one time, like the introduction of Parka and stuff, because you don't, again, I appreciate the history aspect, what they were trying to do. I do appreciate it. But when they keep pulling the one thing the Blair Witch does right, most of all, it looks like a fucking found footage movie. It looks like a movie that literally is a student film.
I gotta think about this.
It looks like a found footage movie. This to me, technically, and I know I'm going to get heat for this, isn't found footage. They're watching it as is. They're watching it as it happens.
Yeah, well, Jewel, this was never meant, even if they had the words for it, this was never meant to be a found footage movie. What this was a live broadcast gone horribly, horribly wrong. Yeah. And, I would also, I will argue with the X-Files connection. I don't know if X-Files was being shown in England at this time, because it would only have been out for a year or two in the States.
Yeah.
So this is probably one of their inspirations would have been a movie that came out in the early 70s, a similar TV movie called The Stone Tape by Nigel Neal, who wrote Quatermass. And that you can find some dubious copies on YouTube, but basically the idea is that there's some scientists doing some experiments in this castle, and they find that, like, if there's like a traumatic experience, the walls of the castle absorb it, and it's all done as, like, for that style. And I think this movie is trying to get that kind of sense of claustrophobia, and that kind of, I mean, in a way, it's, and originally, because I read the Wikipedia article, this was meant to be like a 6-part series with hour-long episodes, and they just said, why don't we just do episode 6? And even though I thought the first hour was boring, there's a definite purpose to it, which is it's leading into the half hour of chaos. And I think that, they're going by, what will people do in that situation? If you're running a camera and you're seeing something scary, you're not going to go, oh, let me dwell on that for a while. You're thinking like a filmmaker. If you're on television, you're like, you're getting the hell out of there. Yeah. It's just like if I were, if we had an additional guest who was like, threatening fights, neither you, me, nor Patrick would be like, oh, okay, let's spoil for a Rumble. We'd be like, dude, seriously, calm down.
Yeah, that's true. Is there anything you guys want to add about GhostWatch before we go? Patrick?
I don't. Let me. Yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean, it wasn't my thing, but I'm glad I saw it. So, I don't think I think it's one of those. It's when you look at what came after it, you can see it as how it fits in that continuum. But I also, I think it was but I think for what it was enjoyable. I don't think it was bad. I just think, it would have been nice if that first hour were a little more engaging. But then again, I don't think that was the purpose of it.
Yeah.
Have you guys talked about something called Special Bulletin? Do you know about Special Bulletin? Special Bulletin was a TV movie of the week done around 84, 85. And it dealt with, I think, a terrorist attack on a boat or terrorists holding a boat hostage or something like that. And it was done in the form of news reports, kind of like the War of the Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think NBC did it. And NBC had a lot of concerns that people weren't going to understand. I think they ran a lot of little, things underneath saying this is just a simulation. But this is very much in the footsteps of Special Bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
That was the name of the movie. So you might want to, if there's a link to anything with it, you might want to include that with the video because it gives a lot of context. This was not wholly original. This is like a Halloween edition of Special Bulletin.
I just threw it in the chat.
Great. What did I miss?
Oh, you missed it. I can't repeat any of it because we'd be in trouble with the YouTube gods. Jewel was just all over the place talking about the cats and what's being done to the cats in the movie, and he tried to give some like pesto chicken recipes that just sounded off.
Jewel, when you now you say you heard cats at the end of this, was it the James Corden number?
Yeah, because I thought it was the Idris Elba number at the end, but I could be wrong.
Memory.
Midnight and the kitties are sleeping downstairs by the furnace.
The only way I would do that show is if I got to have the set be a giant litter box.
I would see that show. I would see that production.
Yeah. It's come to pass.
Oh my God.
Yeah, if that kidney stone is really come to pass.
Patrick, is there anything you want to add about GhostWatch?
I thought it was good. I mean, when you introduce something scary to someone, and you tell them, hey, this is a scary thing. Oh Lord, I hate doing that. I mean, this was the thing where I had heard it was scary. It's because it's like funny. Everybody, no one can agree on what's funny, and everyone thinks they have a great sense of humor. And no one can agree on what's scary, except everyone agrees that they individually have an innate compass for these things. So it's really tough. I'm a pretty forgiving horror audience. And I thought it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I watched part of it in VR. You put the Oculus on, and it wasn't 3D or anything. That was a really scary way to watch it because it was early in the morning and I was drifting off back and forth, and that's fine. Like Gordon, I think, had that experience, but it made it all the more realistic because you weren't quite sure what had gone on. Yeah, I mean, overall, I give it about an 8.5. 8.5. I think it's wonderfully unusual, and frankly, I think you need to watch the documentaries with it because it gives it this atmosphere of dread that's authentic. It works. So yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, the documentary is really well with it too. Yeah. Jordan?
Yeah, I'd give it a 7 or an 8, 7 or 8, because it's not perfect, but it's not meant to be a perfect taught piece of horror. It's meant to be something that's a little bit more experimental, a little bit more kind of conceptual.
Yeah, and it makes me sadly nostalgic for that era. You know, we are, and Jewel, you will enter into this soon. But Gordon and I now have spent the past 4 or 5 years dealing with nostalgia recreation programming for things that existed when we were adults.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you spent a long time where you just used to nostalgia being something that someone else's childhood, or nostalgia being something that you were so young it doesn't matter. But oh boy, when you were an adult and I had a jacket like that, it's like, oh my God, I still do.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it becomes this thing where it's the people will say, "Oh, this is so great." It's like, I was there the first time. It was just no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I still get, because I run a Doctor Who meetup. Let me give you the context. Is I'll have people say, "Well, when Doctor Who started in 1963, it was so progressive because it had a woman and an Asian and a Canadian." And I have to say, "Okay, whoa, Skippy. There's a historical context." Sidney Newman had just come from Canada and was hired to do basically head of drama because they were bailing. Verity Lambert, Doctor Who's first showrunner, was a woman, but there were hints she was not the first choice. And there were rumors within the BBC power structure that she slept her way into the position.
Damn.
And it wasn't because Sidney Newman had worked with her before and he said, nope, if you're going to hire someone, hire her. The Asian was a gentleman by the name of Wars Hussain, who is from India. And he was not only a person of color at a time when England, there was a huge amount of migrants from Jamaica and India, and a lot of brown people were coming in, to put it bluntly. He was not only dealing with racism, he was also a gay man at a time when being gay was illegal.
Yeah.
And at the time, they're coming in the context of the Profumo scandal. So, which is about a minister who gets caught with a call girl who may or may not be a Russian spy. You've got racial strife in England. You also have the beginnings of the satirical movement. So you have a show called Beyond the Fringe with Peter Cook, Dudley Moore, Ellen Bennett, and Jonathan Morris. And this is like very proto-Python, where people are like, oh yeah, you can make fun of that. And if it weren't for them, Patrick and I would not be able to make jokes about Thayer David. I mean, because they led to Python, and so there's that. So it's almost like, you can't be nostalgic if it's hard when people are like, oh, it was so great. Well, when you're there, it's like, no, that's not what the truth is. And nostalgia for anything can be deadly because it doesn't allow you to see something as it is. It sees it as you would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
About 10 years ago, actually it was the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. And I'll have to find the link, but I was preparing for a radio show with a good friend of mine, Mishi Troda, who's 5-time Hugo Award winner and will kick your ass if you cross her. Believe me, I know from personal experience. But I was rewatching the original series, and one of the buzzwords at the time was that the original series was all about optimism for the future, and it's like those episodes are hellishly dark. I mean, Taste of Armageddon. 2 planets are fighting by computer. Kirk comes in and says, "Oh, hey, you want war? Well, rather than this nice safe war, we just shot your computer. So now you got to actually fight each other and die rather than go into these nice, comfortable booths. A private little war basically says, yeah, you know what, Vietnam, it sucks, but we got to keep doing this because this is where we're at. Devil in the Dark, they are killing an alien creature's babies because of the silicon nodes. So it's but to Patrick's point, now that there are people starting to develop nostalgic look backs at things that we grew up with, that things that we experienced as grown-ups, you kind of have to go like, really? You know, the fact that there's this, I mean, it's great that people are discovering this, but it's also kind of like, well, you know, when you were around for it, there's a perspective that some people really need to have in mind.
Yeah. That's something, guys.
Let me go find that link.
That is something.
And Jewel, you're more than welcome to include this in the show notes. And I encourage either of you to give it a listen. It's from 2016, but it's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
Right.
I'll definitely leave a link in the description box for anybody who wants to go check it out.
But Jewel, I want you to listen. That's part of your homework assignment.
Jewel, you're fine. You're the way God made you. Don't listen to your father. Listen to me. You're fine. You're perfect. You do you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing too.
These weird family dynamics have developed here.
Here's the thing too.
I'm like Gordon privately. I'm worried about that boy of ours.
This is what I mean. We could all get together and disagree and have a laugh about it. And that's the thing. Like, I tell people
we could.
Like, right. It's like I tell people all the time. Like, look, I don't take myself so seriously that I know that I can't be wrong. I know that I can be wrong. Like, what is
it? It's a week of 209 reasons.
Right. Like, these gentlemen are very, very kind, and they're great guests to have on.
You're a fine host, Jewel. Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, guys, thank you for this was a lot of fun. I'll say this. I'll give this a solid 7. It was, from a psychology standpoint, it hits all the right buttons. Every fucking button it should hit from a psychological standpoint, especially in the 90s. The 90s were full of dark products. This, The Crow, X-Files, Blair Witch Project. The 90s had some dark subjects, we'll say. So there will be plenty of links in the description box, links that Gordon sent on Skype, obviously. Links to Gordon's website and Amazon page is going to be in the description box. Link to the College Sport Historical Society is going to be in the description box. Links to the Dark Shadows Daybook about is going to be in the description box.
Links.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of them, especially this.
Thank you.
Links and probably a glory hole.
Better him than me, Patrick. Better him than me.
Oh shit! But no, all seriousness, plenty of links to go click on, guys. You guys have a good day. Wait, what do you guys want to do tomorrow? Anything before we go?
Well, I am working the election, so I'm not available tomorrow evening. Okay. So if the two of you would like to do something,
you want to talk about Predator 2, Jewel?
Yes.
Okay,
Gordon, are you okay if we do that?
I'm okay with you talking Predator 2 without
Let's talk about Predator 2.
Be safe during the election, Gordon.
Will do.
Sniff wisely.
See you guys.
Night all.